Get ready to enter the Thrivetime Show.
I'm a father of five with maniacal focus to teach the proven moves, no hocus pocus. Cause get rich quick is not a move, but the proven system will make your life improve. See, I'm more than just a rhymer, like a horse with blinders. Focused on the Thrivetime Show is where you find us. He be the Z and I be the C. Teaching business skills from A to Z. We both grew up poor.
All right, Thrive Nation, welcome back to a special podcast edition of the Thrivetime Show on your radio and now, Z, the podcast download. Now, Z, because it is the podcast version,
yes,
we no longer have any restrictions of, we can do whatever we want, basically.
the shackles have been removed.
Now, the thing is, because we have Pastor Brian Gibson and Pastor Jesse Bryan, our special guests here, we do have to raise up the class a little bit.
Oh, I know. That's... I gotta watch.
But in order to keep the show still salvageable for people without class like myself, with the story he was telling on the radio show that we now are going to hear the rest of the story. Now, you know the rest of the story. On the podcast version, he was sharing how he started his church by basically trying to go from a tavern to a tabernacle. Why didn't you go with the name, Pastor Brian, Tabernacle?
Tabernacle's good. I think I'm gonna, let's go ahead and brand that today.
That's Tabernacle. Awesome. That's nice. Okay, so I want to ask you. So you were telling us on the radio show before I so rudely cut you off to run commercials. I want to ask you this: what do you mean by you started at the tavern? How did that happen?
Well, we were looking for a building. We've been meeting in a pizza shop, and I was gaining so much weight, I had to go somewhere else. Church planners will always fight for buildings. And so there was this bar that got busted downtown for dealing X and Coke. The guy he lost his business. And
well, he's an entrepreneur. What's wrong with that?
I don't understand what the deal was. I don't know what.
Knock 3 times on the back door, if you know what I mean.
Boom. Yeah, boom.
He was all about product placement, So he got placed in the pen, and we saw that building, and we said, what an opportunity. I love the idea of turning a tavern into a tabernacle, or a tavern into a temple. It's kind of what I felt like God did in my life, and that's what River City has always been about. We're looking for people that are far from God. So we went in this old building downtown. There were a lot of derelict bars down there then.
Yes.
The downtown's classy in Owensboro. There's been this Discover Downtown movement that's changed it now. But back then, I would yell to Jesse, hey, honey, you're going to have to lay down some cover fire. I'm going into the church, So it was interesting.
Drive by shooting your own building.
What was the name of the bar that you moved into?
The bar was Club 101.
Club 101.
And then my office, I had another bar in the back that was called the Lizard Lounge. And that's where my office was.
The tagline for the church could be, I like that, the tabernacle, come in for a shot of something good.
Oh, come on. Wow, that is nice.
Hey, we're on to something. Marketing.
Come on now.
Okay,
yes.
So Pastor Jesse here, how old were you two lovebirds when you guys moved into this Club 101?
Brian was 26 and I was 23. I don't know why people came to our church, to be honest.
They thought they were coming stopping for a cold drink.
Exactly. It's a trick.
You have a gin and tonic?
It's a trick.
So how did you get them in? What did you do?
We did everything. If there was a festival in our town, we were there and we were giving away free hot cocoa. At the Christmas parade, we were giving away free water. At the barbecue festival, because we're the best at barbecue. So we do that, and people come from all over the world to come to that festival, but the whole of Owensboro and the surrounding region come out. So we would make sure we were there, and we would provide, believe it or not, clean bathrooms at our church.
Whoa!
And it would be like clean bathrooms, and we would literally clean bathrooms from 8 in the morning until 2 in the morning, and we would have people in, and we would put, we are shameless. We'll do anything. We'll put any gimmick in. So we would put a mechanical bull in for them to ride, and we would give away free things, and we'd open up our clean restrooms. Actually, one of our pastors today came the first time he saw our church was because he is a germaphobe and wouldn't go to the bathroom anywhere else besides our church.
So I want to make this really actionable for anybody who's listening out there who might be a pastor or a business owner. I think of you two. This is what I think of. You are very resourceful. It's not about the resources. It's about the resourcefulness. Like you'll start with, you're the kind of people that you could leave these. Z, you remember the show Gilligan's Island?
Oh, yes.
Where he's always they're always trying to get back off the island, back to the mainland. And for some reason, the professor, he could build like a nuclear reactor with like 2 coconuts, but he couldn't figure out how to build a boat.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't quite understand this.
I don't quite understand. I think they didn't want him to get off. I think that's, that's
the weather started getting rough. blow up that reactor. They didn't want him to get off the island with his nuclear submarine. But the point is, you guys are very resourceful. And so I want to start with you, Pastor Jesse. I want to get your take on this, Pastor Brian. For anybody who's listening to this, they're a church with a smaller budget, right? And they're looking for specific things that they could do to reach the people. They say, you know what? I like this idea of turning a tavern into a tabernacle. And I want to get your take on this, Pastor Jesse, Pastor Brian, and then Z, for the entrepreneurs out there, I want to have you kind of share some guerrilla marketing moves that they could use to bring in the people. So I'm going to start here with Pastor Jesse, Pastor Brian. Don't one-up her. She is your wife. So whatever, try to make sure, don't do that whole, because it's so easy to one-up. I'd say what, I'm going to have you go first so she can one-up you. So here we go. Pastor Brian, what are some ways that I could use, if I'm a church out there listening, to bring in new people into my church?
Well, you were talking about somebody that just started that has a small budget.
Let's say 100 people or less attending the church.
Let's say you're 100 people. What you've got to do right now is you have to create a culture that invites. You have to model that. You have to embody that. So you need to be everywhere. Your job, if you're a church of 100, is to get everywhere where there's people and invite them to church. And you have to learn to be shameless about it. And you got to learn to work with what you have. A lot of people are always saying, I'll do this when I have this much money. But that day's never going to come until you hustle today. I remember early on, we got some vans given to us, right? And these are the worst vans in the world. They're like minivans. They're falling apart. They're like cash for trash kind of thing.
Nice.
And so we decided we have these vans.
So sweet of people to donate their trash to the church.
Thank you. The church is here to receive
This
your
van
trash.
does not actually work, but I just love it so much. It means a lot to me. You can put it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
What a blessing. So what we did is we said, hey, we're going to haul drunks home from the bar for free. If they vomit in these nasty vans, this van is a vomit bucket already.
This van isn't very classy. I'm not getting rid of here.
So we started doing that. We would go to the bars, advertise, drop around cards. Hey, you need a sober ride home so you don't kill you or somebody else. Call us. And I'd give 50 or 60 rides home on a Friday night as the church. Something that makes you stand out. That'll get you favor with your community fast. Now, you got to think about safety in that situation, because it gets sporty at night. I'd like to take Colol with me if I was doing that, just to have some muscle in the car. But
do you remember that man that was dressed like a woman and he had that purse and he was smoking? You said, you can't get in the van if you're smoking because we don't have any smoking in the van. And he's like, no problem. And he puts his cigarette in his purse, and then we're in the van driving and it just starts to get caught fire.
His purse catches fire.
Oh, it's awesome.
It was the best night.
Yeah, we're probably one of the only churches to ever have a cross-dresser with a combustible purse in their van. It was awesome.
Oh yeah, I don't. No, of course. I think you're the only one. Yes, of course.
Brian's
yes,
like, I know that you put that cigarette in your purse, and he's like, no, I didn't, dude. I promise. And he's like,
yes,
you
I did not do that. I did not put it in there. Now I want to ask you this. Pastor Brian, for anybody out there who's trying to, let's say you have a church of 100 people or less, and you're trying to market out there to the families. You say, hey, I will pick up homeless people, drunk people. I'll do that move. I'm going to go places where there's over 100 people. What are some ways to reach maybe the soccer moms?
Yes, let me say this, ministering to people who are down and out, or Jesus talked about ministry to the poor. The anointing's upon you to preach the gospel to the poor. We always do that, and we do it unto Jesus. But a lot of times that's a long-term ministry play, right? People have a lot of problems they have to overcome. So you can't just minister there.
Where are my pants?
I mean, it's like that. So you can't just minister there. You also have to minister to the family. And so we're going to have to create a great environment for families, because that's what Jesse'd be great talking about that.
Okay, so Pastor Jesse, what are some of the best ways that if I'm listening, I'm a pastor, I'm a minister, I got 100 people or less in my church, I just really want to do some guerrilla marketing in the community. How do I do it?
So at 100 or less, what I would do and what I did do was gather up my 5 girlfriends that were soccer moms or had small children in that age group, and we would hit every place that had something for small children. So we would go to the museum. And while we're at the museum, I'm not just there to talk to my friends. While we're at the museum and all of our kids are playing, we are literally intentionally going around the room and making friends with these women. I went to the Kinder Music. I've been to every soccer game and softball game and t-ball game. And I stuck my kids in every league that I can possibly get them in. And the whole time, I don't just sit there and watch my kid. I don't just drink my tea. I am in those bleachers, and I am working every single person, finding out who is unchurched or unsaved. They are now my friend, and I'm going to be their friend, have a conversation with them, invite them out to do things, have coffee until I make sure that they know that I have a church that they're invited to.
Now, what if you have a church of 500 people or more? So 500 people. You've got a church now, and see, this is kind of where we're getting into your realm, because you have an existing business. It's over $1 million of revenue. You have a church, over 500 people that are attending. What are the moves, Pastor Brian, that people could use to go out there and really impact their community?
To impact their community at 500, they got more resources. They have a little more to work with. And so I think they got to focus a couple of things. Number one, they're going to have to focus on getting some big invite days to get people through the doors of the church and to get their people moving to do it. And I think a great thing that does this, if you're in one location, is an illustrated sermon. We would do things like at that size where it's like we're preaching off of the Wizard of Oz. And so you have all these characters that look like the Wizard of Oz, right? You got the Tin Man, you got the lion, and the Tin Man needs a heart. Come on, you need.
Did you do any of those little flying monkeys? Because those are kind of scary.
We had flying monkeys.
We had the witch, no flying monkeys.
The flying monkeys we couldn't afford, but we could get a witch.
I mean, if you're going to do it, you got to go big or go home. Come on, Pastor.
Next time I'll have some monkeys.
Okay, there you go. I feel better.
But you send those characters into the restaurants on a Friday or Saturday night when it's packed, dressed up like the witch, the Tin Man, the lion. And people will line up now to take pictures with you. And you're saying, yeah, I'll take a picture with you. Just when you post it, hashtag River City Church.
What are some other themes like that I can tap into? I like the Wizard of Oz move.
Three Little Pigs.
Three Little Pigs is massive.
Parents come out of the woodwork in Target. If your characters are in Target walking around, they want the picture. All they have to do is hashtag it River City Church.
So Three Little Pigs. The Wizard of Oz. You have another one. I'm trying to tap into your genius here.
Oh yeah. And these are ideas that aren't just mine. I have eyes to plagiarize, right?
Right.
So I'm getting these ideas everywhere. So you got Three Little Pigs. You have Wizard of Oz. We used to do the Eagle's Nest. Where we would build this massive nest, and you preach out of it. God wants you to fly with the eagles, not live with the turkeys, that kind of thing. And then you bring there's guys. Sorry, Tom, you're a turkey.
Our
He's in the room.
turkey's such a nice non. We named him after a man. Found out later he's not a man. But the point is, she Tom.
And she is gluten free.
She's a tomboy.
Just saying,
she's gluten free. Absolutely. So
but
important,
anything like that, we would do at the movie series. We've done Star Wars stuff. Now every week,
Star Wars was big.
It's massive. Every week, I don't want to do that because after a while, the church does start to feel like a carnival. So you use those days to create big attendance days.
Do you ever do like Republicans Only Day?
Oh yeah. Where it's like me and President Trump. Only Republicans.
Only for left-handed people Sunday.
Yeah.
If you're left-handed, if you know what I mean, we invite you to the church.
Right. That is correct.
If you're right-handed, if you know what I mean, we welcome you to. Okay, so I mean the themes. Is there anything else, Pastor Jesse, you could think of that would help me? Because I think a lot of people are so busy ministering. They are looking for a couple aha moments, a couple moves that I could use to reach the community. I have 500 people or more, and then we're going to get Z's take on ongoing marketing. So what would you do?
A great one is T-shirts that we make, and I won't let them print up the T-shirts unless there's rivercitychurch.cc on the back, mainly because when people are sitting in sporting events, the person behind them has to stare at their back the entire time. So when they're talking to you, they're not talking to you. They're talking to your, hopefully they're not staring at your chest.
Yeah.
They're staring at your face.
There's not much to look at down here. So that's awful. Keep on going.
But the back has our website, and it says helping people win, or it says, church is fun, or whatever our motto is for that year. And that helps people because it's just another guerrilla marketing kind of thing out in the community. We happen to be the top sports city in the state of Kentucky for Little League sports, so our people spend a lot of time at ball games, and that was one of our ideas.
Now, Dr. Z, this is what I see, whether it's a church or it's a business. I see.
Is this
people
play on words?
I know this kind of ties in, I guess, subliminally to your optometry clinic.
I like it.
But here's what I see. I see people that say things are going so well right now, I don't need to do any marketing. I mean, right now things are doing so well. I don't need to do any marketing, right? And then they go, things are doing so poorly that I can't afford to advertise. We got to turn the ads on. And I said this polarity of marketing, up and down. But you have been marketing your optometry clinic for 26 years.
Yep.
So how do you do it? Talk to me about consistency. Why does that matter? How do you do it?
Well, number one, it matters because there's a high turnover rate in pretty much any city. People are moving in, people are moving out. You may think everybody knows Your moves, you may think everybody knows your business, but they don't. There's a high turnover rate, number one. Number two, when people hear your ads, for most businesses, only 3 to 5% are in the mood to buy that thing right then.
Chet Holmes from the Ultimate Sales Machine agrees with you. He worked for Charlie Munger as his partner, and he says 3%
there you go.
of your ideal and likely buyers are ready to buy today. Everybody else, it's like, so every month it's a new 3%.
Right, exactly. So you may be saying, I'm throwing my stuff out there to 97% of the people that aren't interested in me. Yes, you are. But you need to be consistent with you because that 3% changes every day, and you need to keep your message out there. Keep it fresh. Now, one of the super moves I would do is what I would call the Michael Jordan move.
Ooh, the Jordan?
Yeah, it's not, you're not slamming stuff, but it's the Jordan move.
Is it where you quit everything and then play baseball poorly and then come back to the good thing you're good at?
How did you know? You've read my show notes. No, here's the Michael Jordan move. Is that when Nike made his shoe, guess who wore his shoe?
Spike Lee.
Well, yes.
Cobra Commander?
And Michael Jordan wore it. And these are considered cool people.
Oh.
And so one of the things that I would do is say, hey, listen, there are some cool people. You may not be able to afford Spike Lee. You may not be able to afford Michael Jordan to come into your place and to, help advertise. But you know what? Every radio station has on-air personalities.
Right.
And they have been coming into people's cars and in their homes for years.
Thirsty Thursday.
Pay them money to get on there and say how awesome your business is. In other words, now all of a sudden someone's listening. They've built up the trust bucket.
Welcome back to 106.9. You're listening to K-Hits, where Dr. Z continues to be the man. He's the coolest.
He's the coolest.
He's the coolest man ever.
Ever. And so they could say things about you that sounds wrong for you to say about yourself. I'm kind of a big deal.
And now?
You don't want to get an ad and say that. But you can have an on-air personality say, he's kind of a big deal. And that's okay. That's good. So my point is that you can have someone endorse you so that gets your trust bucket. They trust them. They know them. They believe them. They don't know. You are new. You are unknown. So you get someone to endorse you, i.e. wear your tennis shoes, i.e. the cool kid, and that helps give you instant swag.
Now, here is the next notable quote I want to have you guys break down, and then I'll be done harassing you. George Washington Carver. I'm not sure if the listeners out there are familiar with George Washington Carver, but he was a guy who was born a slave. Think about this. He was born a slave. He didn't actually know his name. He didn't know the year he was born. He didn't know what he didn't know. But he's the guy who realized that the farms that the African Americans were taking over were all depleted of the nutrients needed to actually produce a good crops. And so he just began an obsession with the peanut and with the sweet potato. And he began to just obsess about the peanut and the sweet potato, because a byproduct of sweet potatoes is it oxidizes the soil, thus making the soil, returning the nutrients to the soil. Now, he didn't have a degree, didn't have a mom and dad, didn't have a name, didn't have a birthday, but what he did have was this notable quotable. He says 99% of the failures come from people who have the habit of making excuses. Wow. That is a powerful statement from this man. So I want to ask you this, Pastor Brian. I want to ask Pastor Jesse and Dr. Z this. If I'm listening to today's podcast and I say, gosh, I am starting a church in a city. I don't have any connections here. I don't have any money. I'm operating out of a CD bar. If I'm going to start this ministry, I'm going to be starting with very limited resources. So the timing's just not right now. What I got to do right now is I just can't get started till I have more resources. My excuse, I don't feel good. I got a little sore left knee. I got a little headache. I don't have the connections. What advice would you have for somebody who's making that excuse that says, I can't market my church, I can't market my business right now because I have limited resources? What would you say to them, Pastor Brian?
Well, if it's not now, when is it? If it's not you, who's going to do it? And if it's not here, where is it?
I'll repeat that again.
If it's not now, when is it? If it's not you, who is it? And if it's not here, where is it? So I think wholeheartedly, you got to start where you are with what you have. And you got to put one foot in front of the other and fight for it. The first thing you have to create anything or to change anything in your life is you have to have the will to win. And the will to win overcomes a lack of resources or any obstacle.
And I don't want to put you on the spot here with your biblical knowledge, but you did go to theology school at Oral Roberts University. There's a Bible story I'm thinking of here, where God tells, I guess, Moses, he tells him to take the staff. You gotta pick up the staff, and he's kind of like, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to pick up the staff. I'm busy. I've got carpal tunnel, God. I got a lot going on here. And he said, no, pick up the staff. I mean, can you kind of share that story? Because I think this is powerful. Somebody has to pick up the staff.
Yeah, Moses is making all of these excuses. God's calling him, and he says, listen, I stutter. I'm not eloquent.
Stuttered.
He stuttered. He's like, I'm not your guy. I don't have anything. I don't have what it takes. And God speaks to him and tells him to pick up this staff. And then he tells him to throw it down. He throws the staff down, and it becomes a serpent on the ground, supernaturally. Then he tells Moses to take your hand and put it in your shirt. Pulls it out. His hand is leprous. And it's to be a sign and a wonder to the Egyptians and also to the Israelites.
God, this magic trick's not going so well. I mean, he stutters. Now he's got a hand with leprosy on it. He's got a snake instead of a staff. How does the story end? Does it just end there? And he says, in your face, Moses.
He's got to use what God's given him. And so, yes, he does. He goes into Egypt, and he does the same kind of signs and wonders as a sign. So God was telling him, you don't have to have all your ducks in a row if I'm with you, and if I'm here, and if this is what you're called to do. Man, if you'll get after it, it'll work.
What's the story about the guy who's hydroplaning on the water? He's just supposed to walk out on the water, and he hydroplanes over the water. He steps on the water. Who's that guy?
Yeah, that guy's Jesus at the Sea of Galilee.
So it seems like this is in the Bible.
Yes, the whole idea is God has control over the storms and the rest of that. If you'll believe it, keep your eyes on him. You can do great things.
Who was the guy with the small rock weapon, the old slingshot? Who was that
think
guy?
Clay went to theology.
Who was
Clay
that guy?
has read this
Who
book.
was that? Who was that guy's name? Was that
Who was it, Jesse?
Layro, Oral Roberts' brother, Layro?
It was Layro or Jethro.
Who was that guy?
Who was it, Jess?
David.
It was King David, wasn't it? As a shepherd.
But this
Started
is
with nothing.
this is all throughout the Bible.
Yeah.
But yet you see a lot of churches that say, I am struggling to walk on the water, struggling to take that first step, struggling to pick up the staff, struggling to...
Yeah, the scripture says to not despise the day of small beginnings. Don't despise the day of small beginnings. It's the whole idea of power in a seed, right? A seed is such a small thing. God's given you a seed. He's given you an idea, given you a business idea, given you an idea for a ministry. You have to take that seed and sow it. And it's going to take time. It's going to take cultivation. It's going to take labor, right?
Labor.
To grow something. Used to hear all the time, Jesse's dad, who is a pastor, used to say you spell ministry with 4 words, W-O-R-K. It is work. A lot of times people think they're spiritual people and they think, wow, this is all just going to happen because God is with us. But no, God said put your hand to a plow and don't look back. You got to get work brittle hands. You got to sow your seed. You got to fight for it.
Now, Pastor Jesse, George Washington Carver says, there's no shortcut to achievement. Life requires thorough preparation. Veneer isn't worth anything. I mean, for somebody out there listening who's going, I really, I know there's a lot of things I should be doing in the community, but really what I'm looking for is to make a Facebook funnel that's going to double my church tomorrow. I'm looking for a hack, I want to, it's like my MLM of church. I want to get my pyramid going real fast here. What would you say to somebody who wants to grow this mega ministry overnight and not put the hand to the plow? What would you say?
I would say be very afraid, because if you don't get to do the work with the small and you don't get to grow it, then even if you just walked in which doesn't happen, but if you just walked in somewhere miraculously and just took over this mega ministry thing, you'd just be terrified and run out crying, because you would have no background to have the foundation for that. The Bible says that God gives seed to the sower. So I take that as, until I sow something, God doesn't really count me as a sower, and he's not going to give me any more seed. But if whatever I have, if I just will use it, do something with it, work with it today, God will take it from somewhere else and give it to me if he has to, because he wants to give to the person that's going to work with it.
Proverbs 13:11 apparently agrees with you. I don't know why it's so weird that keeps happening. But Proverbs 13:11 reads, "Wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gains little by little will increase it." You said if you, by some circumstance, you ran into a big sum of money or a big church or a big organization, you'd probably lose it, right? Is that what you...
Well, preachers, businessmen love to make money. Preachers, we love to get people because they're souls and it's kind of what we're into. So you think I'm going to do all of this and it's just going to happen, but people are God's greatest resource. Like literally, if there's anything that God will defend, fight for, and keep out of the hands of the fool, it's his people. So if we don't gain wisdom through time and through work and through being work brittle and being faithful, God will never trust his most precious and treasured resource with us.
Now, Dr. Z, I have two areas I want to get your take on this before we wrap up today's podcast. This is all about being resourceful.
Okay, so number one,
when you started your optometry clinic, did you come from wealth, or how did you start that thing? I mean, did you start off with massive bank loans or a rich uncle? I mean, because we talk about being resourceful, but what was your moment of resourcefulness? I
don't share this very often, but I won the lottery. And
I was very skilled at it. I was
very skilled. I was good at picking numbers. I was kind of a number guy, if you will, and so I just kept winning the lottery just week after week, and
it's amazing. The Powerball is what I would recommend. Powerball,
it's my move.
That's a fun game too.
Even though it wasn't around 26 years ago, that was the move.
Oh yeah, that's the false memory. It was really
I'm teasing about that.
Bingo.
I had some pyramid schemes, a Ponzi scheme. And,
you signed up people real quick through auto shipping lotion from coast to coast.
I mean, who doesn't need another bottle of lotion?
That's a question. That's a valid question.
So Ponzi schemes, lotteries, and then of course, I was petty theft is always a good way to raise cash too. So that's big stuff.
Scamming?
Not big stuff. You just kind of
You really are bringing a new element of class to scamming.
Dr. Madoff.
I had nothing. Very few resources, and day one I had a very small, very very small ad in the newspaper, and I put it in the TV guide section because I figured that's where they were going to, they're going to hang on to that all week long and see what's on TV.
People used to use newspapers to find out what to watch on TV at set appointed times.
I know.
Using a television. See, do you remember you'd hit the buttons on the cable because the cable box was connected to your TV with a cord?
Oh, you're rich.
And you would hit ESPN. Hit that.
I got it and walked over and turned the channel. It's cool.
Did you have rabbit ears?
Yeah, of course.
You put foil on there?
Oh yeah.
So you started with the small ad.
Started with a very small ad.
Then money starts rolling in. I mean, are you making like fives and tens, or just coming in like fives?
Maybe down to 20. I'm like, sir, did you mean to give me a 20? Here's your 20.
Did you upgrade to another ad, or did all?
Yes, then I went big. As soon as I got it to full page and dominate, then I went to radio. And I added one radio station, then I added a second radio station, then I added a third radio station, and I just kept adding.
And people in your niche might say to you, the other people in your industry might say, why are you still advertising after all these years, bro? I mean, don't people know who you are? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Ba-da-ba. Top of mind. 3% are buying. You got to keep it high turnover.
But I want to turn it off.
And and there's other avenues of advertising. I used to track it quite a bit back in the day. So did you come in from that say like, well, no, the guy next to me in my cubicle told me about you, but I also have the coupon I got out of the Yellow Pages, and I heard you on such and such radio station, and you're like, I've never.
I heard a recorded call at the Elephant in the Room the other day. It was hilarious because the guy says, she says, how'd you hear about us? And he goes, I think I've seen you on YouTube and Facebook, but no, it was Google, the signs, a friend of mine. And it was just like, okay, you're here. You're in. Come on in.
Just
go ahead. It's okay. It's worked. So the final question I want to ask you say this all the time. You say that your high water mark, it actually is a good thing over time. I mean, you said with certain stresses when you were smaller would have probably broken your head now, or broken your head back then, but now they're very beneficial for you. Can you talk to me? Because I watch you with a high water mark, and there's not a whole lot of things that can really irritate you or stress you out anymore. And if they do, you're pretty good about having it happen below the surface, like a duck, paddling. Talk to me about that, the high water mark, because we talk about people who want to get rich immediately, and they just crumble amidst the success.
Well, that's a very good point. And I personally think success is harder for a man to handle than failure. Number one. That's a side note.
You do believe that.
That'll be another podcast.
You do believe that.
Because it gives them resources to do things that they shouldn't be doing, okay? So success is sometimes, pride then gets in because you're like, I'm kind of a big deal.
People know who I am.
Yeah, and pride's never a good thing. So, but to answer your question about... what was it again?
Well, it's the high water mark.
Oh, yeah, the high water mark, yeah.
Yeah, you actually are thankful for this. You've actually taught me this.
You're right. So what happens is it brings wisdom. It brings an understanding, and they say, that's manageable. I've had it. worse than that. That's okay. I know how to deal with that. I've dealt with that. It's going to be okay. Everybody calm down. Calm down. And so I think it brings on just an understanding and wisdom of how to, number one, how to deal with it. Number two, it's not that big a deal. Number three, you've dealt with it before, maybe in a larger sense. And so, I had some of those high watermarks in my life of stress and things going wrong in your business. And the more of those you sort out, the more you understand that they are sortable and that you can eat an elephant and that you can, fix the problems.
In a kind of a weird way, I hope you have a really awful week because I know it'll improve your high watermark.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
No, for all the listeners out
awesome,
there,
by the way,
I want them to have a great week so that you can continue to be the supreme ruler of humbleness. I want them.
Well, you are the most humble man on the radio.
Absolutely. Pastor Brian, thank you for being here. Pastor Jesse, thank you for being here. And on tomorrow's show, we're going to be talking about determining the average weekly donations per person. And if you're in the business world, that translates into determining the average revenue generated per person so you can make a budget. It's the Thrivetime Show on your radio. And as always, 3, 2, 1, boom.